All right. Tuesday the 23rd. Hello, hello, hello. How you doing,
Hey.
Heidi? It's been a little while. Good to see you.
It's been way too long. It's really good to
Hmm.
see you.
Yeah. And it's nice to see you walking.
Ish.
Good. Ish. Well, that's ish is way better than before, right?
Yeah.
So is it feeling a little bit better?
So I developed this weird surgery complication and
Oh,
it's like really difficult to explain, but I actually have to have a spinal tap tomorrow.
oh,
Yeah, to like deactivate the nerve.
oh, I see.
So it's kind of complex.
So it's
But
giving you pain.
yeah, and like it's it's so weird. It's like always purple and swelled up. It's just weird.
Oh,
But hopefully that'll fix it.
yep, yep. Well, the body knows how. We have to keep reminding ourselves the body knows how to heal itself. You just got to get out of the way, get doubt out of your mind, focus on the perfect foot. Focus on running and jumping and skipping and having fun, right? It's coming. It is inevitable. It's in your future, your near future. It's been enough time that yeah, you're starting to potentially solidify the limp as normal, the pain as normal in your expectations. So just be wary of that sort of, getting comfortable with your surroundings when it's not permanent, right? It's not. This is just a temporary phase you're going to look back on and go, oh, what was my lesson there? Right? What was the universe trying to tell me? Hey, Steve, good to see
Hey
you.
there.
Hey, hey, I'm back from Canada again. It felt really silly to drive up there, which was a long ass drive, through the border and everything, drive all the way back, and then just a few days later, um, fly back up there. But it was well worth it. There's Juan. Yeah, good. We got us a party. That's awesome. Yeah, we had.
Very much alive.
Hey, there he is. He is alive. Good
How
to
you
see
doing, guys?
you. How you doing?
Good, good. I'm done with all surgeries.
All right.
Yeah, it took 8 of them.
Eight. Okay.
Yeah,
It takes
yeah,
whatever it takes, right?
yeah. Hey Heidi, not. It was not a skydiving accident, so non
Yes.
related.
Yes. Yes. It was
So yeah,
just a
I
little road thing.
yeah. So, but yeah, I'll be hopefully jumping in 3 weeks. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, that's great. Good, good, good. Well, maybe we should do some VR stuff, get your brain current. Have you done that?
Yeah, actually, haven't done it, but I did 3 jumps between surgeries 7 and 8. So,
Oh,
so
like
the day
actual
be
jumps?
yeah. The day before the surgery, I was like, hey,
Ah,
if I don't do it now, I'm gonna be out for another 2 months. So I got 3 jumps.
yeah.
They went fantastic. I tested my legs, my arms, I mean, everything went well. Yeah.
It did. Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
That's
It
a
was
nice little boost, right? Like to
oh yeah, yeah. I
remember
was very
that
happy.
this is who I am. You
Yeah.
know, I'm taking to a little detour here periodically, but yeah. Yeah, I mean that's part of the life of a skydiver. There's the phase when you're skydiving your ass off and the phase where you kind of wish you were, but you're finding life force energy from the things that are, when you're in skydiving mode, you think of them as mundane, boring, but
Mhm.
it's not. It's just the other part of your life.
Yeah, and it's incredible the mindset that I had this time because you know, I had 2 accidents in the past, so coming back to skydiving was really difficult
Yeah.
because they were skydiving related accidents.
Yeah.
This time the accident was, way more serious than any
It,
skydiving
it
accident
was,
I had.
but it
But
had
I was
nothing to do
so
with jumping.
calm.
Yeah.
But I was so calm in the airplane. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew I was meant to be there, and I waited over 6 months to do it. So
Yeah.
it was just fantastic. Yeah.
Well, that is great. That is
Yep.
really, really good news. And so you're going to be on the ground for just another 3 weeks.
Yeah,
So
3 weeks. That's
nice. So you get into the gym and walking and
yeah,
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 good.
yeah. Working out every day. I'm eating like an animal, trying to recover all the weight that I lost.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, I'm doing my thing.
good. Yeah, build up the muscle mass.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it really does help, especially if you can get into exercises that really relate to the areas in skydiving where strength will benefit you.
Mhm.
I mean, your exits, your even your body flight, I mean, a little bit. Obviously, you
Mhm.
fly in the tunnel for a long time, and you're pretty damn tired. So that's clearly a bit of that stuff would help. But flying the canopy is so physical, So doing all the exercises that will help the muscle groups that are relevant to that, it has really helped me. I mean, I made only 5 this weekend, but it's all high pulls in breaks mostly,
Yeah.
and I really didn't feel it. I mean, I started to get a little tired on Sunday because it was hot. And I had people lining up, hey, can you fly with me next? And that's one of the things that we eventually, hopefully, learn how to do, which is like I'm not feeling it. Not right now. I'm a little bit tired. I'm just going to enjoy being on the ground. I'm going to shoot the best video I ever did because I didn't just land from a jump. It's not the
Mm.
same. I mean, you can't really see it, but my video is better if I haven't jumped, for sure, of course. Especially when I'm zoomed in, it's something that's far away. When often I'll land and there's two canopies flying together. Like the whole second day of this course was two-way canopy flocking all day.
Mm.
It was awesome because it was a little bit more of an advanced group. I can't film that stuff after I've landed, even if I lay flat on my back. I don't, I'm not in that mindset. I'm in this mindset, not this one. But yeah, anyway, yeah, it was beneficial. I could feel it, from exercising more often and cutting the lawn. That's one of my, karma exercises. Or dharma, I think is the right word, isn't it? That's the word, dharma. Yeah. Anyway, so you guys heard, I assume, heard about the caravan. The Niagara Falls boogie was happening this past weekend, right down the road from where I was, because I was in Burnaby. And I talked to not one but two different people that were on the drop zone. One of which I just ran into at the airport. It was just, I see a guy walk by with a rig on his back. I was like, I actually followed him up to where he was going, and I introduced myself. He goes, oh, you're Brian. Oh yeah, yeah. So he just picked his brain a little bit about what happened, but nobody really knows. She dropped the load as normal. She did the jumpers away call, but instead of a normal sort of spiraling approach, she just pushed it nose straight over, which is unusual. They hadn't seen her do that before. And just 16,000 feet per minute is what the numbers showed, all the way to the ground. And just poof, there was nothing. So painless way to go. But you got to wonder, did she black out from, hypoxia? Was it structural failure? It wouldn't be an engine out. And even if a wing fell off, because I was talking to a professional pilot last night about this stuff. And he said, basically, if you lose one wing, you're not going to fall at 16,000 feet per minute. It'll be slower because that one wing will be flying you around. So either both wings fell off, or I don't know. It's weird. It's weird, but I know people ask about this stuff, and if I have information, I share it with the group. Um, but I don't think it pertains to us, and that's hard. You know what I mean? Like there's something going on somewhere in the world that's tragic, but it doesn't pertain to us. And if we get worried about every little thing and we're always getting dramatized about things that are not really relevant to us, you make yourself miserable. Um, oh, there we go. I'm not gone. I'm just having video issues. Is it better? No, I'm frozen now. That's strange. Hang on. I'll figure it out. I think I got it fixed. I never plug this in. When I get back from a trip, there's just so much to plug in.
Sorry. Now I sound better. Anyway, I just figured I'd give the news update on that. So skydiving related topics. Is there anything that you guys are thinking about or curious about or heard about? That's fine. I mean, there isn't always something at the tip of your tongue, you know. Sometimes people show up for these meetings just, I mean, I just show up open-minded, you know, to whatever it's gonna be, but it's either way, you know, even if we just sort of shoot the shit, this is part of skydiving to me, you know, to the connection with other human beings that get you, that don't think you're crazy. Like the woofos, the doctors, you know, the nurses, they're all like, oh, why do they do this? Why do they worry me so much? We understand. We know why.
Yeah. Did you see that base jumper jumping with a carpet?
The carpet caught my eye. I watched that video several times.
Me
Did you
too.
see that one, Katie?
I
Yes.
want to now.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's
It's
amazing.
a flying carpet.
It's
Yes.
he took yeah, I don't know if it's like a 6x8 or something. It was a pretty sizable carpet,
Mm.
and he had some sort of a board attached to the leading edge of it, so we could sort of keep the front of it in control, just hanging on that, and just flew off the cliff. Managed to get on top of the carpet, and obviously he must have been a wingsuit flyer, right? So he understands the principles. And the glide ratio was as good or better than a wingsuit, right? You saw it. The glide ratio was phenomenal. And he's
I was worried about that.
he's proximity flying. Yeah, and I can show you the world.
Yeah. Because I was thinking how he tested that, because at the end, when you jumping from a cliff on a wingsuit, you know some glide ratios, so you know you're gonna clear the rocks, the mountain, and everything. With the carpet, if the
don't know.
carpet fails,
Yeah.
you're on top of something.
That's that was exactly my thought. What if this doesn't work for some reason? You go over and you lose the carpet. Now you're 100 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
That's so yeah. I mean, maybe he had. I mean, I would imagine he exited off a cliff that had a nice drop off initially, so that if things went totally zooey, he could face away from the cliff and throw his pilot chute. Maybe.
Hmm.
I would
Maybe.
like to think this isn't the first
So
time he's
good.
jumped this carpet.
Well, you know, I mean, what aircraft owner is going to let him do that? You know, I mean, talk
Yeah.
about blanketing the tail, quite literally. So I would be surprised if he ever tried it out of an airplane, but maybe a hot air balloon pilot would give him a chance.
Yeah.
But I don't even know who it was.
I think that also depends on where in the world you are, how likely it is to find an airplane to fly you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're in Russia and you have enough money, you can do anything you want. That's what the Russians always say. This is not a problem. Whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Unbelievable. I was really impressed, and I wasn't sure if he was going to drop the carpet and pull, and nope, he just hung on to it through his pilot chute. I was worried the burble would be too big. It wasn't. Amazing.
It's so good.
Oh, you saw it. Oh, good.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
It really flies. Like, I mean, he's going to put all the wingsuit manufacturers out of business. Now it's just going to be, you know, the carpet placed by the side of the road there, you know.
I'm
Oh,
telling
we're
no-
very
no-
good.
No,
We're very good carpets.
I can go to IKEA and get my wingsuit now.
Flight tested, no problem. But yeah, there's I think probably other people will try this because it went so well, which means that sooner or later the things that we were worried about are gonna happen. You know, and unless you just go, oh, you know, like the guy that hit the net and the guy that landed in the boxes, you go, wow, that was really ballsy, and I am not doing that. But I could see how somebody might want to, but here's the other side of it is, do you really want to carry a Persian rug up a mountain? I mean, you already got to carry your rig. you know, wingsuit, you're looking at like 4 or 5 pounds. This is heavy. I've carried a lot of carpets. I'm sure you guys have too. That was probably the worst part of that whole jump. Because you wouldn't want a
Well, if
flimsy,
you,
cheapo one.
I know, but if we make you famous now, everyone knows your name. I'll
Yeah.
carry it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe you can get Sherpas to carry your carpet for you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was definitely that was the talk all over the drop zone. Did you see that? Yeah. The other one that's floating around, oh my God. They did an AI thing with
With the windsuit.
no. Well, that
No?
would be I'm
Oh.
sure I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did. And I
Hmm.
have not been able to find it. Somebody sent it to the drop zone owner in Canada on WhatsApp. It's Trump, Biden, and Obama all talking about skydiving. And it really looks like
Mm.
they're there. And you know, like Joe Biden's like, so who cares? So we're, you know, old flat flyers and we take a long time in the door. We have, you know, a right to do what we're doing. And Obama's like, I think we need to have some sort of swoop program because the swooping is just so cool. And man, you come ripping across the drop zone, you know, you're you're cool, you know. And Trump is like, I'm gonna have the best boogie ever. Right? We're gonna have the best planes in the best, you know.
Hmm.
It was so well done that I had to watch it several times in a row. Just phenomenal. So look for it. I don't know where it is. I don't know who created it. It had to be a skydiver because it was very, you know, kind of, you could tell the person knew the sport. They knew, you know, social issues within the sport, and it tickled me like hell.
They said flat flyers though?
He said, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so that's an Aussie.
Oh, could be, but I say that too.
Do you?
Belly flyers, yeah. Flat flyers, sure.
I've only ever heard Australians say
No,
flat
yep.
flyers.
Yep.
That's good.
Well, it could very well have been. I don't know. I mean, our political situation is clearly
Yeah.
the laughing stock of the world, so they talk about us a lot. But yeah, I have no clue the source of it. Feel free to search it, but you will be in stitches. So well done. Yeah. So what else can I say? All right. So, remember I've been talking about separating bottom surface tapes on parachutes that have bottom surface tapes, right? Because some of them don't. Holy cow. I did 5 jumps. The first 2 jumps, I left it alone to make sure I had a really good baseline. And then I removed my tapes on Saturday night and did 3 more jumps, and it was definitely better. And then I removed I opened up a hole in the slider, basically a mesh hole, and the best openings I've had in years and years. So the parachute clearly flies faster and feels better, longer dive, longer swoop. It was very simple, simple to do. So anybody that's got a PD style canopy or any of the other ones that have the bottom tapes, as far as I'm concerned, you know, it's approved. I've done it before. I did it on my Sensei. And the packer, one of the packers in the drop zone was like, I want to do that too. I was like, you sure? She's like, yeah. It makes perfect sense. You don't need the stitching on the bottom and it's going to go faster. And yeah, man, I want to do it. Okay. So I sat down with her Saturday evening and I showed her, you pop this, pop that, and then you strip all the stitching out. It's actually very fast. The whole thing takes all of about, 15, 20 minutes at the most, unless you're, worried. And she did it on her own and happy camper. So PD's going to be really pissed if they hear that I'm telling people to unpick their parachutes, but I'm not telling him to do it. I'm just telling him that I did it and then it worked great. So that's.
And so I'm understanding you picked out the reinforcing tapes across the bottom skin,
Yeah, the B's, C's, and D's.
and you just pulled them out entirely.
No, I didn't take the tapes out. I left.
Okay, so you
I
left the tapes in,
tapes.
you just made them loose.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So the tapes, and you pull on it and the tapes still hold the load, right? If
Okay.
I feel like a line and a B line on the same cell, I pull tight and you can see clearly that the canopy skin, the ZP, is not carrying the load across that vector. So
Okay.
it's doing its job still. It's just now you don't have this ridge all the way across your canopy, 3 separate ridges to create turbulence and therefore reduce speed, which reduces your overall lift to drag ratio, right? You want to cut down on that drag. And it's really very simple to do. You know, swing by here, Steve, I can do it for you, or you can do it yourself if you feel brave. Just don't miss. You know, don't pick off the wrong thing. I was removing some vestigial line tabs towards the end of my Saturday evening unpicking party, and I removed one of the wrong brake line tabs part way. And I went, oh, and I ran over to Petey's shop. Yeah, they call him Petey, which is very confusing because they say Petey says this. They're like, performance design said that. No, Petey, the rigger. Oh, okay. So, but Petey had a machine that I could fix it on, so I jumped it like that for the rest of the weekend. But just be careful that all you're doing is popping it, both stitch rows on the edges where the line tab is, just on the bottom skin. It doesn't have to be inside that seam. That can stay. And then at the non-loaded rib, you should pop it there too. And then you just stick the stitch picker in the middle and just zoop, it comes right out. Sounds crazy, but it definitely works. I mean, if you have an Icarus, it's irrelevant because they don't have bottom surface tapes, right? They have those diamonds, right? The triangle on each bottom surface panel that becomes a diamond to reinforce it. Doesn't matter. So Gyro understood that span-wise tapes are not such a great thing. I think he was probably just trying to save money, is my guess, because those tapes are expensive as hell. But yeah, I think we just never considered the effect until I pressurized a canopy and looked at it and went, oh my God, what have I done? You know what I mean? By sewing those tapes on there, I've distorted a beautiful thing. So this is a way to make it beautiful again. And like I said, I did it, the first time I did it was, I want to say like maybe 7 years ago, and I jumped the crap out of that sensei. It definitely worked. Hey, Matthew's here too. It's a good size cyber party. He's coming on in. You can give us an update on his new Sam. He got a new toy as well. There he is. Hey, Matthew.
Hey guys, what's happening?
Well, we're just discussing all kinds of skydiving related topics.
Excellent. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of it was sort of sidetrack stuff, like the cool video of the guy jumping the Persian rug off the cliff.
I did see that. A non-skydiver friend sent me that.
Yes. Oh, it did, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
getting out to the WUFO world too.
Yep.
Amazing. So did you get in the air a bit?
Yeah, not this week, but yeah, last week I jumped a bunch. Probably got 10 jumps on that canopy now.
Great. You're starting to get the feel for it, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm still kind of like, it's different conditions. I had one that I popped up pretty good the other day.
Mhm.
And then the last jump on it, I just came in extra fast, and my feet were on the ground, and I just couldn't. I don't know if I could have lifted them up higher and kept pushing.
Yeah.
But I just ran, and it was about as fast as I could run.
Yeah, you just got to get in that Naruto run position, where you're really pushing down with the toggles right before you put your feet down to see if you can delay putting your feet down as much as humanly possible. I mean, it'll slow down just fine for you. You just got to anticipate it and get through that initial round out phase where things start to relax, the line load, right? Line tension starts to relax after you've leveled off, and maybe you got a little bit of a climb, or maybe you need to keep adding, but you make those adaptations. And once you're there, just keep those toggles moving, keep them moving. Because if you get behind the power curve by stopping, even for a moment, canopy creeps forward, lines get slack again, and you can push the end of the flare, but it ain't going to do much. because the canopy has drifted forward on you. It's extremely common. It's one of the most important things to recognize is that you need to keep adding brakes throughout the landing. I mean, maybe right afterwards, right after you level off, you got to play with it a little bit. But keep adding because that in be in a good body position at the time, so that if it does happen to touch the ground before you expected, at least you got the feet under you.
Yeah.
Or a foot.
Yeah, all was well. Just earlier in the day, the wind was a little stronger. Like that morning, I had that pop up, and then the last jump of the day, there was no wind, and so I don't know. I just still get used to it. Yeah.
You got it. I mean, it's like it has a different personality in the different conditions, depending on what you put it in. But just stay calm and aware and adapt. But on the days where the winds are strong, just keep in mind that there is this program in the mind that says when my ground speed gets slow, I finish the flare. And that's not necessarily true when there's wind, So you
Yeah.
just got to sort of stay gentle. And if you do have that pop up, immediately center your wing, right? You get off and then back onto it when the wing is about to get to the center point. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
instead of the pop up resulting in the natural pitch oscillation where it dives afterwards, you deliberately get on it early enough to get off the brakes and then back onto them at the right time before the pop-up goes through its natural evolutionary process of losing its speed, and now you can't stop the surge anymore because you're too slow. So you got to do it early, right? To recognize, oh, that's the pop-up. And so instead of just blindly stabbing into it and experiencing whatever it feels like doing after that, you're the boss.
Yeah. I just committed to it, and it just set me down.
It set you down nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, well, I've already done it. I'm not letting up now.
Yeah.
I'm 10 feet off. I almost touched the ground, and now I'm 10 feet off the ground. It felt like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. 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 It's got plenty of lift. You just gotta be patient.
Yeah.
You gotta be patient. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been teaching like when it's really windy, and you find yourself over flaring a little bit and you're starting to go backwards. That's another time to get off and then back on. Even if you're really deep into the toggles, if you're starting to move backwards across the ground, off and then center, you're moving it forward and then stopping it over your head with a deliberate re-application of the brakes at the right time. And it'll just sort of set you straight down instead of, I don't run backwards very well. I don't know about you. So that really helps. And sometimes it helps with accuracy too. I'll come off the brakes sometimes a little bit at the end to get my target. You got to be careful. You can break your foot.
Yeah.
I once many years ago, probably 35, 36 years ago, twisted my ankle by doing that. But it can be a useful technique, as long as you're in balance and ready for it and you're landing on your heel and not your toe. Because targets sometimes we find stabbing our toe, and that can be dangerous. Yeah, we had some accuracy folks at the drop zone this past weekend. I'll see if I can share some of that. Let's see. Desktop Burnaby. Yeah, you know what? I think it's probably still on my camera now that I think about it. Because I didn't get all the videos off of there yet. No, yeah, it's not on here. I'll check one other place. Nope, still on the camera, which is either this one or the other one. Oh, yeah. Somebody gave me a GoPro. Isn't that sweet?
Cool.
I said I needed an old GoPro to run my face cam, because the technology to bridge the gap between the radio system and the camera is only for the old style GoPros. The guy came back, he's like, yeah, I had it in my closet, I don't use it anymore, I use a new one. So I have an old Hero, the original Hero.
Nice.
So I think I'll probably give that to Joshua, unless I need it, and I'll be like, give it back. Anyway, cool. Oleg showed. Hey, hey, what's going on out there in California?
Uh, I only have like 8 canopies now and 3 rigs or 4.
Yeah.
Not
You're
becoming a
collecting
gear
collecting
collector.
gear, yes. Well, I mean, you got to sort of take stock and go, right, if I haven't jumped the thing in a year, I should give it to somebody who needs it, because there's people out there, not necessarily give, but make sure it
Okay,
gets
hold
there.
on. I had 1 canopy and 1 rig until like 2 months ago. This is all
Oh,
new stuff.
really? Oh man.
Yeah.
And are these all crew canopies?
Well, okay, I'm counting like the kiting wings, which one of them's airworthy and stuff like that. So there's wings I don't use. But no, I downsized to 1, and then I've got 4 crew canopies, one of which is going to go to a friend, and I've got 2 crew rigs that don't fit me, but that could go to friends that might fly with me on later loadings.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that has a purpose.
yeah,
It's funny.
I got a little carried away.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Also, I got good news. The canopy task force that I've been trying to get
Mhm.
into, they said that I could come to the next meeting.
Nice.
So I don't know what that means, but that's a way forward.
That
So-
is. So you can be heard, right? This is how we.
Well, it's not about hearing, it's about listening. That's my main focus, is to learn from how that process happens.
Mhm.
If they want to hear from me from a perspective of a beginner, I'd be
Yeah.
happy to, but I don't really think they need it. That was just Michael Watkins was suggesting that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's exciting. Cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
better show up with some beers or wine.
Say again?
Show up with some beers or wine.
Yeah, exactly. If you're gonna just.
Yeah, make an impression. Buy the donuts. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, on Zoom, on remote meetings.
Well,
Remote. That's fine. I don't know.
Yeah, that's not gonna work quite as well.
Yeah, but I told them that I'm happy to volunteer to do any sort of grunt tasks they have, like PowerPoints or reports or anything they need done.
Yeah.
I'm just there to support.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. And so the objective with this obviously is to improve safety. Is it also to like create programs and drills? Is that part of
Oh
it?
yeah, so they've already rewritten the sim, and from what I hear, there's going to be like a lot more canopy stuff for the A license. The B license course is getting improved,
Mhm.
and then the next task will be the C and D license canopy courses and drills and stuff like that.
Yep.
So
That's
that's
great.
where I'm going to come in.
Yeah, that's great.
And I'm right on the edge of a D license, so I guess that's appropriate.
Yeah, I do hope that those upper level courses include formation flying. Not
Well, and
not just accuracy.
that would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can't consistently fly with somebody if you only use toggles. You know what I mean? You can't be there. So it forces you to use the whole parachute. And to me, that's a demonstration of real skill. If you can stay there, within 100 feet of somebody for the entire high pull, you're a decent canopy pilot. That or you just unstowed your toggles, let go, and the other person did all the work. But it's even that's not going to work because you're going to land off. Right? So there's always the element of turn. I mean, when I do briefings like on Sunday, right? I said, today we're all flying together. You're going to partner up, and we got different exercises that we're going to do, but you're not going to be alone today. And it was
Nice.
awesome. They made 5 jumps just, doing different things. You got the guys with the 240s and you got the guys with the smaller canopies together. And I'm just bouncing around from group to group. And in some cases,
Wow.
I just would like one of them, like these 2 guys, 2 very tall, skinny guys. I was like, yeah, you're a team. You similar size parachute. I mean, literally, they're both like 6'2", 6'3", but 130 pounds. I was like, wow, have you guys met? And so I gave them my radios, and I just flew with them. And so they're doing like working on circling around each other. And so I would just insert myself into the circle. So it'd have the three of us circling around under canopy and then reverse it back the other way and circling around. That's fun. I mean, it works very well with a two-way. You've seen it's not hard to do. But when you do with a three-way, definitely a little more interesting. And it makes me wonder, how big could we do a rotating round, basically, of canopies?
Are you doing the talking skydives for these, or
Yeah.
is it just?
Yeah. I mean, it's either I'm talking or the two-way has my radios because I only have two. I used to have four, but they broke. So I just like take it off of my helmet. I did that a few times this weekend. If I'm not on the load, my radios will be on the load. But yeah, I did several talking skydives that went extremely well. And I just think that's one of the best things. If we really want to make a difference in the sport, you need mentors that know how to do that. And you need,
And that's the problem, right?
students-
Like if they were made to be C&D license requirements,
yeah.
how would you identify those mentors, right?
Yeah. I mean, if I fly with somebody, I can tell if they're qualified to do that. But
But you're not like they need to be able to write something in the sim, some recommendations, right?
Mhm.
Standard?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah,
so
I mean, how do you define ready to do a, in close formation flight? I'm not really
yeah,
sure. I'm not really
like
sure.
we have enough problems getting experienced jumpers to do this stuff,
Mhm.
let alone finding people that'll.
It's
There's
a
not
pretty,
even enough crew coaches.
it's a pretty fun coaching jump. And, with crew coaching, of course, you're limited in the parachutes that you can use. So it gets a little more complicated. This is just, whatever they're jumping. And
So
maybe, Mhm.
if you could make a list of drills both for landing and in the air that should be done by the time you get your C or D license, what would it be?
Hmm. 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 Well, I mean, I think the most important stuff is being able to turn in a coordinated manner, to be able to manage pitch in a variety of ways.
But that's
And
vague,
to be able
right?
to
Like
to
we
be
need
able
a
to
specific criteria.
right. Yeah. Yeah, you would need to do, for instance, deliberate pitch exercises where you, hold the brakes, surge it, and then stop it before it goes through its natural cycle, and do adaptive braking so that you minimize those oscillations in a shorter time frame. And that's something that could be written into it. I think that's one of the more valuable ones. Dive arrest turns is vital, and I think it would be wise, especially if you're talking about D-licensed people, dive arrest turns out of a front riser turn, which is different mechanism. I mean, the ability to just go from a toggle turn to bumping both toggles is one thing, but if you're holding a front riser, now you got to drop that front riser and hit the brakes or ease off of both of them as you're, if you have a little bit more altitude. So both of those I think would be really wise to do. I've found that most parachutes can cut their recovery arc in half in a 180-degree turn by doing that. So that's a quantifiable thing. I mean, I don't know that every drop zone is going to stick a fly sight on their student to figure out if they, cut their altitude loss in half, but I think that would be nice. I think a braked approach demonstrated, a competent braked approach into the target, not necessarily braking all the way to landing, but through the approach in a pattern that is not so big would be really, really wise.
Wait, a brake surge at like on final, or what are you saying?
Well, it's not so much to do the brake surge, a braked approach where you're not so far from the target throughout your whole pattern. So like when you're landing off, you don't necessarily want to fly the world's largest pattern. So by doing full flight on the downwind leg and then adding brakes as you go into your base leg in tight to the target, facing into the wind and the brakes, sinking it down so that you're not covering so much ground, lining it up, and then easing it off at 100 feet and then flaring. I think it would be very good to for everybody to be able to demonstrate an off-field landing pattern.
So
That's
you
That's
don't
one-
think it should be
one
required
of
to do a braked, a toggle surge or a front riser maneuver for landing for C&D licenses?
I don't think it's required. I mean, that inherently, if they get off the brakes at 100 feet, they're going to have a little extra speed just from that. I don't know. That's a hard one because certainly some canopies, we had this discussion this weekend around the campfire. When you get so small that the parachute can't flare properly without a little extra airspeed, my feeling is this: either the pilot needs to be a real badass that's a good spotter, or they are on too small a parachute. And so, quite a few people have, like Joe, I built years ago, I built him a 61 because he wanted to do XRW, built him a Sensei 61. And he said, I believe that any canopy can be landed straight in. I said, I believe you're wrong, but you're welcome to try. And he proved himself wrong. Thankfully, he was in the
So
P's.
like,
He was thankfully
mean-
in the P's, but after he landed, the P's were all over the place and not where they used to be.
the Lightning requires double fronts for
Right.
good landing. You can land it without and just like have a stumbly landing.
Yeah.
But most people won't want to try the double fronts, and maybe they should learn that in a C or D license course before they learn it on a new canopy they're not familiar with. Mm.
Maybe you're right. Yeah, I mean, I do think we need to be able to walk and run on our parachutes.
I mean, if you could design 5 jumps for the C license course and 5 jumps for the D license course, what would they be?
Well, I'm gonna have to think about that for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about
I
it.
mean,
Maybe
certainly,
tomorrow during our
yeah.
one-on-one.
Yeah, I mean, to collect altitude loss data for a 90, 180, and maybe 270. I mean, I don't think the 270 would be important, but the 180, I still hold that that's valuable information because people that are not swoopers still do 180s into the ground for other reasons. They're not showing off for their girlfriend with the camera. They're just barely making it back and feel like they need to turn it back into the wind, right? And we've had numerous fatalities from that. So to know those numbers, to glean those numbers, I would certainly, I mean, I do that in my course, of course. I mean, even the people with 20 jumps, granted their parachute's about to change and those numbers are therefore going to change. But I think it'd be nice to get the C and D license holders to collect those numbers and not just the maximum amount of altitude your parachute's likely to lose in a 180, but also the minimums, the different types of turns that reduce recovery arc. I think that those drills alone would be game changing if people did that.
Okay.
And they don't unless they come to the course.
Well, this is the opportunity, right? I can suggest it if I
Yeah.
get the chance.
Yeah. I would
Sherry already
definitely-
asked me to start thinking of ideas for drills, so
I would definitely, I would support those. Other things like rear riser landing, I had, by the end of the course, most of the people this weekend had done a rear riser landing and none of them had done it before. You give them exercises up high where they get to really learn, not just the flare, but also, just slowing it down gradually to reach the stall point to know where it is. And then you know what you shouldn't go beyond in your landing. But in all except one of them, they didn't stall on the landing. And the guy
what
that
happened to the one that stalled?
he was nice and close to the ground, and it was a non-issue because we had talked about pulling back on the rear risers to drive your upper body forward, to lift the knees and get the feet underneath your body. So even if it does pull back on you, at least you're resisting it by pushing forward with your chest.
I see.
Yeah, and so he was fine. He still stood it up.
Nice.
Every single, okay, with one exception where the guy had trouble grabbing it, but he's the guy that I was most concerned about because he downsized like the day before the course to an X-Fire. And I gotta say that X-Fire is, it's not an S-Fire. You know what I mean? It's a different parachute. It's a lot more radical. And he had some trouble with his gloves or something as he's flaring, and he kind of sort of stalled and tumbled. But I think that was an unusual circumstance, but it was really impressive to see people landing on the rears, because you're going to need it sooner or later. You know, break a steering line, toggle gets stuck, something, knot it up.
Well,
knot
and
it
the
very
alternative to that is to just cut away. There's a whole philosophy about that is
Yeah.
to just chop.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
If you don't know how to do it on, so should it really be required for CND? Has there
Well,
been
that's
cases of
only
people?
that's only Performance's designs policy in their manual, but that's not mine.
What's the
That's
performance
not
design? Oh,
necessarily
I
that's
see.
not necessarily Icarus's policy. It was just John LeBlanc said, most people have never flared on theirs, so they should probably just cut that fucker away. Well, that doesn't mean it's true. I
Why
mean,
not?
do you want to ask the dealer for a whole new hand of cards? Or do you want to fly what you've got, which is a perfectly good parachute, if you've done the drills, right? I mean, it's all predicated on somebody having landed on the rear prior to the emergency situation. That's why it needs to be on the list. Does that make sense? So then they don't have to cut
Yeah.
away and then have a cutaway problem, right? Or have I can't find my parachute problem. That's more likely. Right? They're not all in California. Go, oh, look, there's the one pink thing in the middle of the big brown field. We got trees. Cutaways back east are a big deal, or, up in Wisconsin or whatever. So, all that stuff, we haven't had that many reserve failures. It's true. But complications due to riding a reserve, which quite frankly is not quite as good a parachute. I mean, it's great for opening, but it doesn't flare quite as well in most cases. It's just more complicated than just keeping what you've got, assuming that you've already done that exploration. So I still hold that's the way to go,
Or we could teach people how to fly reserves better with double fronts landings, right?
Well, that's also a good idea, right? I mean, it is. I mean, what if we, made it a requirement to jump F111 7-cell canopies a little bit? Because everybody's got that in their reserve container. There's nothing else. That, of course, requires a lot more F111 canopies out there. Hey, maybe I should build that. Just like demo F111 canopies, just call it.
Well, you could do that with PD. $65. You get a reserve mounted on risers.
Yeah. Yeah. But you have to wait to get it because they don't have an infinite number of them.
Well, a couple weeks. They're not in that high of a demand.
They're not. Okay. Well, maybe they should be.
They should be. Yeah. But people don't always do what's good for them.
No, they
maybe
often
one requirement for CRD license is to demo a reserve.
Yep. Yep. I think that's a great if they haven't had a reserve ride, maybe, right? But even in a reserve ride, how much did you get to know that reserve? You're getting out of 2,200 feet in your spinner, you cut away, and now you're in the saddle by 1,700. And, oh, there's Velcro toggles, and oh, there's trees. Avoid the power lines, and you flare and you land. And you go, oh, I survived that one. You didn't really get to know the canopy.
Right.
You know what I mean? You didn't stall it. You didn't see how much slack there is in the brakes. You didn't front rise your reserve at all, right? And you don't know that reserve likes front risers. Maybe the brakes are too short on your reserve.
Yeah.
Right? Some of the old Ravens.
A demo won't really help
here.
with. Yeah.
The original Ravens, they would literally stall way up here, which tells me the brakes are pretty damn short, in which case.
Wait, the Raven ones or the Micro Ravens?
No, before Micro Ravens, yeah.
Micro Ravens?
Yeah, before those.
Well, what's the Raven one?
Raven 1, 2, 3, 4. Though the number in Raven was the size.
So I have a canopy. I mean, I have a rig with a Raven 1 reserve. Is that something to be cautious of?
Well, it doesn't look great, and you may want to check the brake line length if you're going to actually be jumping the thing. You might want.
Well, it's for somebody else to borrow if they want it. It
right.
costs me $250 for the container and reserve.
Well, that's pretty damn good. They're okay. I just they weren't all reinforced with span-wise tape. But the parachute was fine. You know, people used to use those for base jumping. But
Okay.
I think my experience is the reserve toggles were a little bit too short, maybe a lot too short.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's a great idea to have a requirement to, at the very least, jump something that's similar. You know, I mean, for God's sake, jump a squirrel wingsuit canopy. I mean, they flare about like a reserve. At least this way you've got something more similar than your
Or
Saber
a lightning.
3. Yeah. Yeah. Put them on a lightning. Make them do a hop and pop. Yeah.
Something I would mention is an intentional cross country,
Yep.
high pull cross country to learn how far you can fly. I've had the opportunity to
Isn't
do several of those recently.
Yeah.
isn't that part of the B license course, the long spot?
Well, they call it a long spot, but it's not defined. In some canopy courses, they only do from 5,000 feet. So I don't know if I'd call taking it out 2 miles across country. You know, to me, a true cross country, you're open reasonably high and you're pretty far out. You picked a day that's windy and you got to follow the roads. You know, you got to go IFR. I follow roads. And that's really quite an amazing thing, because you've got enough time on a cross country to observe where you're going and make some changes to your flight configuration, and you have the time to see the differences. I mean, I think you can do that from 6,000 or 7,000 feet, but I love that idea of a true cross country. Granted, some places it's not so safe to do that. You know, beach drop zones, or, you know, places in the mountains, it gets a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
So we have to think about that one. But, you know, you can have it as this is the rule, but you can waiver that rule because, you know, drownable body of water or sketchy mountains or some other circumstances. And, you know, the safety and training advisor can, you know, make that not a requirement for you, but still taking it a few miles out is a great idea. Mind blowing how far a parachute can go. You know, if you do it right. And you notice crab angle, right? I mean, we had some long spots. The wind got a little bit strong this weekend. Ground winds were like this, and the uppers were like that. Literally 90 degrees off. And I didn't realize it until I got under canopy, because I had neglected, with a class of 11 or 12 or whatever it was, to just go to manifest and say, hey, exactly what are the winds? I just trusted the pilot, and that was my fault. It wasn't a problem. Everybody's landing on the drop zone. But when I got under canopy the first time, I turned it into what I thought was the wind line at 2,500 feet, and I'm going directly sideways. Like, oh, okay. Probably should have asked the right questions. Yeah, because often in a cross country, you've got to like crab this way, and now you're crabbing this way later. You just have to keep noticing, where am I actually going to?
Hey Brian,
Yep.
why isn't the turbulence drill with the stall to hands up and check the surge? Why isn't that a thing? Why am I the only one doing it?
I don't know. Maybe I need to make a video or an article or something for Parachutist Magazine.
Would you consider that like a good drill for C&D?
Oh, I think
No,
that's
because it takes
it's
a lot of
vital.
practice and it's scary.
It's a little bit scary. I mean, you don't have to go to the full stall, in my opinion. I think you just have to slow it down enough. But the surge is volatile, right? Because the surge ability of your parachute is basically inversely proportional to the airspeed.
Do you teach it in your courses?
I always make them do that in the courses. Yeah.
So all the way hands up, not just like stop it here,
Yeah.
hands up and check, right?
Just get those hands off real quick and then spank the brakes back down. Yeah. And not just once, but whatever is necessary to rebalance the system with opposing inputs. Yeah, we do that every course. Yeah.
Nice.
I call it surge dampening.
Surge dampening, okay.
Yeah.
Can you just cliff notes that real quick? You just
Yep.
full stall, hands all the way up?
There's no need to
Okay.
do a full stall, because with a full stall, you have a very deformed parachute and chaos, you know. If
Yeah.
I mean, I do a full stall.
you can, but I think you get the lesson a little bit more purely, if you will, if you simply slow down, lose the airspeed down to maybe 3/4 brakes or something, and you get off those brakes real quick and pounce on them as soon as it starts to dive, which is basically immediately, you know, and as soon as you pounce on it and the canopy starts to return to center and you feel that motion, you know, in a positive pitch change, now you get off of those brakes, and the earlier you realize that this is occurring and start to respond to, the less it's going to oscillate back and forth in the process. If you do it just right, you might need to just go basically off, on, off, one little touch one. That's it. That, to me, that's like perfect. That's a well executed maneuver.
So actually, yeah, Flight 1 and Alter Ego will do this too, but
Hmm?
what you taught me was to go to full stall, which I thought was nice because it's a really quick surge.
Yep.
And I was able to react so quickly. I don't even know why when those little tiny collapses were happening that I was preventing.
Right. That you were actually preventing. Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe it's just that not everybody can stall. And if they, you know, are going to actually explore the stall of the canopy on the steering toggles, they got to take a wrap. And now you're adding an additional risk of, if it doesn't go well and you got to cut away, now you got stuff wrapped around your hands.
Hmm.
So, you know, keeping in mind that the point of this is safety.
Yeah, well, I take wraps during the stall.
Yeah, the
Um,
medicine should never be worse than the disease.
I do take wraps during the stall, and then what I do is I check that I can, because there's a way to take a wrap where you kind of ties around the toggle thing sticking out, the
Yeah.
pin, and then there's a way to do it where you can just quickly unwind it. So
Yeah, yeah, there is a way, and it can be taught for sure. I mean, you know, wrapping it around your hand mount altimeter is probably not the best way. Putting your toggles on your feet and standing up, probably not the right way, but entertaining. I was never actually stupid enough to do that. Yeah. So that, I think that's a great idea to include at least some sort of surge dampening, you know, and active pitch control. Right. I'm writing it down.
And I would think by a D license, everybody should be able to stall on rears or on toggles and recover.
Yeah, without losing their
Well-
heading, without losing more than 100 feet of altitude. You know, we got to put some specific parameters on it to mark success, if that makes sense. You know, I reached a stall and I didn't die is too low a bar.
100 feet of altitude and
Sure.
heading.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just pulled that number out of my head, but the truth is, you could probably do it in a lot less than that. Like if you do it skillfully. I don't normally lose more than about 40 or 50 feet in a toggle stall. In a rear riser stall, yeah, I guess it's probably pretty similar in altitude loss. But that may vary with the canopy, so you don't want to, you know, if a canopy just doesn't like to recover real quickly after a stall, you don't want to penalize the person, you know, in the exercise. So you just have to take it in a case by case. But yeah, unfortunately, you might be forced to use the word reasonable amount of altitude loss. You know what I mean? Because it is a little bit different from one to the next. But that's a judgment. Yeah. So cross country, dive arrest turns, collecting altitude loss data, surge protection.
What about like
Surge
front
protection.
riser approach? So you don't have to
Yeah.
land with the front risers, but at least use the front risers to lose some altitude below a certain amount of feet.
That I think you know, as a safety and training advisor could get behind that, right? But there's a lot of folks that are safe skydivers out there that I don't think I would trust them to do front risers all the way down to flare altitude. But what you're talking about there has a lot of benefits. If you're, you know, if you're set up a little bit too high, you could fix the problem. And as I talk about a lot in the courses, you know, how you get off of those front risers is just as important as the choice to do it. You know, you get off real slowly so that it doesn't surge into level flight. surge, sorry, wrong word. Balloon, maybe? In the old days, that's what we used to call it, ballooning. Maybe there's a better term. So it doesn't level off and shoot off. Yeah.
Okay.
What other great drills? I would certainly like to see people be able to fly a coordinated turn.
And how would you measure that?
Rib line compared to bridle angle?
Wait, what? Oh,
Oh,
the
rib
bridle
line
angle.
compared to bridle angle. That's a pretty good, that's definitive.
That's not in the B license already? I guess not.
No. There's nothing in there about coordinated turns yet. Yeah, they're just, I don't know. It needs to be discussed a lot more. I mean, I've written articles, I've made videos, and I hope that they show up, but you can't make them drink. At least not information. Yeah. But yeah, to demonstrate coordinated turns, not on a front riser, because that's cheating. That's always coordinated, but demonstrating proper harness turn technique and or proper toggle turning technique, right? Because I remind people, once I tell the whole story of, well, this is rudder pedal, this is aileron, it all makes sense. They're like, well, I only use my harness now. Like, well, actually,
Yeah, what is proper harness turn technique?
well,
Because there's like 4 or 5 different types of.
effective.
So basically, well, that's part of the B license course, isn't it?
Well, it didn't used to be. I mean, there is a little bit about it, but not much explanation, and certainly no description of the physical mechanics of it
Okay.
that I've seen. Nothing.
Okay, yeah, harness turns and what else was it that you said?
Well, I mean, well, in a toggle turn that is not aggressive at the start of it.
Plus gradual.
Right? Yeah, sort of gradual at the
Gradual,
beginning, and then increasing roll angle
gradually
afterwards, and then
in.
gradually coming out of it. Right? To me, that's just as coordinated. You know, I mean, the bottom line is you watch that pilot shoot and you feel that load factor not shifting to one side, you know, where you're loading one side of your canopy. Yeah, you know what?
What about
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
what about like flare turns and turn flares
Yeah.
for landing? Would you want people that have a D license to be able to have actually done some of those?
Well, I don't feel comfortable with making them do a downwinder, but I do think that it would be wise for them to, at the very least, be required to do a crosswind landing, which can be done where you flare and then curve, and it can be done where you curve and then flare, right? And I do with more advanced students. I set them up like that, and this weekend we did two loads where I said, no, here's the wind line. I want this pattern that ends up 45 degrees to the wind line. And for those of you that feel comfortable with, at, maybe 50 or 75 feet, leaning in the harness, getting that turn towards the wind line begun, and then adding those brakes slightly higher than the normal flare altitude and blending the process, and the one where you level off completely, zero roll angle, crosswind, and then you lean on the harness and add your gentle toggle in the offset position and ride it through that one. And those are absolutely drills that a C&D license holder should be able to do.
To basically in a crosswind do a flare turn into the wind, which is a way to make them do a flare turn safely.
Yeah. Yeah, you're giving them a situation where they're getting a positive reinforcement result if they're turning into the wind. Right? If you
And
had
why
a few
wouldn't
of
you
them
want
that
them to
started-
see this?
Mhm, go ahead.
I'm because I've had so much canopy coaching. I'm probably like a bad person to be on this canopy task force to like be the perspective of a new jumper.
Yeah.
But also I'm really untalented, and I've been able to do flare turns and turn flares and double fronts and 90s. Like I'm able to do all these things that, like, why shouldn't every D licensed person be able to do all that stuff?
I completely agree. Yeah. And it's
Well, no, because you
fun.
were saying
It's fun.
that there's people you wouldn't trust to do that.
To do the front riser all the way to the ground. I'm thinking more of like older jumpers and folks that maybe don't have the strength to pull on their fronts very effectively. You don't want to,
Oh, right.
if they've got some other reason why they aren't physically capable, they can be a safe skydiver without being able to pull their fronts. They can.
Got
They're
it.
a little bit limited, there's solutions that they're going to have to come up with that accomplish the same goal, like rolling in a sachet to accomplish that same goal. But they can survive the sport. But they're not going to survive if they don't know how to bail out of a low turn. They're not going to survive if they don't know how to crab it into the wind during the flare.
So would you say that
Go ahead.
being able to flare from a turn should be added to the list?
Yes.
Or is that just too dangerous? Like,
Well, it
it can
doesn't
be a
have
15-degree turn, right? Or
it can be from the base leg to the final. Why does it have to be at landing? Right? That's something that's filmable. I mean, it's a little harder to quantify their altitude loss, but at least you can see that they rolled into the turn and bumped the brakes. They're going to be deep because they're going to overshoot now. If they flew a perfect pattern and they do that kind of a turn, they're going to end up high after that turn and potentially overshoot. But that's something that you can tell them, have your base leg a little deeper than you normally would. And I think likewise, possibly even more important than your suggestion about adding front risers on final to shorten you would be to add rear risers on final to lengthen the final approach leg. I think that really could help a lot of people. I understand we have people overshooting. What's going on with my camera? It's getting all funny. People do overshoot into the trees. Absolutely. They hit fences, they smack into hangars, they hit airplanes and helicopters, but undershooting is equally problematic, especially if you don't make it over that fence. So getting onto rears, the appropriate amount, getting small, and getting off of those rears at an adequate altitude. That is something I would definitely like to see. And that's something that I feel like everybody should be able to do that. Fronts are heavier than rears usually.
But if they can flare from half brakes, why can't they flare from rears? Like, rears to toggle transition could be really important because part of the purpose of these C&D license drills, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not like, part of the purpose of these C&D license drills is because people are going to get into swooping.
Yep.
And by teaching them the good sort of swooping type habits ahead of time in a safe way, when they do get into swooping, they might be able to survive it.
I agree.
So if we're going to teach them rear riser landings, why not rear to toggle transition landings? In which case, why does it matter if they let it up on a safe altitude? Because they can just take it all the way down to landing.
They can. It's just if you're riding the rear risers, you're actually holding your rear risers all the way down to flare altitude, dropping and flaring. It's not going to be a great flare because you've lost a lot of airspeed. And depending on how they do it, they can drop when they come off those rears, right? Because if they come up and then down, right? I release the rear risers by lifting my hands up and come back down. That can be a surge in a low airspeed context that is aggressive, right? Because you're not going very fast. It's way more surgible.
I like the idea of doing a surge for landing. So do a toggle surge and land in a flight cycle, because now you're landing with different pitch attitudes and which changes your flare. And in turbulence, or like, let's say you did a low turn and recovered, you're not going to have a choice.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Would you say that's a good drill for required?
I think you'd have to be very specific in what they're required to do and not let it degrade into chaos, because there's a lot of possibilities in how that could go down. And you have to immediately flag the concerns, They're at 50 feet in brakes, they let it off and hit the brakes and it doesn't do anything, they break their legs. Now, again, the medicine is worse than the disease. So it would make sense to me to have a very specific, objective, like, well, for instance, now we've got audibles that can, beep at 100 feet. Most canopies, you can be in half, even 3/4 brakes at 100 feet and come off of it, and it's going to recover by then. but it will be oscillating. And of course, the more lifty the canopy is, the shorter the recovery arc, the more sort of exaggerated those oscillations tend to be. So you're kind of penalizing the people with big parachutes, but hey, yeah, that's not a bad idea at all. But I think,
mean, yeah,
I think at the beginning we have to ask the question: where are the problem areas?
Yeah.
Before we going into the gigantic, galaxy of possibility of what we could make people do to make them sort of better in general. Where are the problem areas? Where are people getting hurt? They are tipping over on windy days. They are flaring too low and they're flaring too high and letting off of their brakes. They're turning too low. That's pretty much it. That's 4 things. And so if we design drills based on the actual data, the injury, the mechanism of injury, then we're going to create a reasonable plan.
Well, does this include C&D license holders or just
Yeah.
beginners?
Well, I think it should be all of the above, and certainly with the C&D license holders, turning too low means they deliberately turned too low. They just didn't know it was that low, right? I mean, I was just at this wonderful drop zone, Skydive Burnaby, which quite frankly, I put up there with going to Skydive Voss and any of the others. Wonderful place. And they had one of their top jumpers who's jumping I don't know, 68 or something like that. She's got thousands of jumps. First jump of the season, did a 450. First jump of the season, and drilled herself into the ground. And didn't survive it. And that made a mark on everybody. When your local sky god goes in, you're like, shit, is this sport safe? And it was a judgment mistake. She had the
What was
skill.
it? What
She
was the mistake?
to do a 450 when you're not current. Long Canadian winter,
Oh.
right? Long Canadian winter. Yeah, you California
see.
guys don't know what this is like, but they freeze their ass off for 6 months. And some of them are lucky enough to go down to Florida or Arizona, but most of them don't. They're just throwing logs on the wood stove, So I think that part of it, there needs maybe to be some very clear language in USPA's publications that says if you haven't jumped in a month, you're not allowed to do a high-speed approach on your first one. Period. Right? We got the rules for it.
First one, that's not a very strict requirement.
Well, then you'd have to say the first 5 or something, if that is more powerful language. But to shine a light on the vulnerability of our overconfident but undercurrent brain.
Would you make that a BSR?
I think that's a great BSR. Why the hell not? It's more important than most of them. Distance from clouds. I mean, really? Who cares? That's not a safety thing. But making good decisions about that kind of thing. Yeah, that's this way. It's made for you, right? It's my first jump back. I know I'm not allowed to swoop. Just demonstrate a beautiful straight in, or if you're like, well, but I'm on a 61, I got to get a little heat on the pancake. Okay, fine. Point it into the wind at 300 feet or something, lean on your fronts a little bit. You get a little bit of energy. Believe me, any canopy can be landed safely if you do that. Anything. But you don't need a 450. And she was a lovely lady. And that's
too bad.
She died so that we can learn. That's the way I look at it. So that we don't have to.
And sorry, guys, I don't mean to like monopolize this.
No, you
topic.
do. This is good stuff. This is the kind of conversation that we're all going to benefit from, sort of sending our minds, not just, during the meeting, but afterwards into this question, this large wonder of, well, what do we really need? If I was really going to nurture the next generation of skydivers, what would I add to the existing program? And I think this is, yeah, I mean, we've already isolated a number of drills that are vital. Yeah. I would love to figure out a drill that really helps them to not tip over on windy days. That'd be nice. I'm not really sure how to do that other than the crosswind landings where you're on approach, you start to flare symmetrically, like you're not carving it into the wind and cheating. You're just going to ride it all the way down to flare altitude, 45 degrees off the wind line, and then you know where to look, right? If I'm drifting this way, I got to look the opposite direction to where I'm drifting. And I can say that till I'm blue in the face, and believe me, I do, but it doesn't stop them from doing it right after I said that. That's the problem. And it doesn't always end up being a train wreck or a hospital ride, but it's usually, sort of traumatizing for them, and it's humbling in a bad way. And then they end up, kind of losing a little bit of confidence, and the love spark for parachute flight gets converted into a fear fire on final approach on their next jump. And then they get tight butt syndrome, which increases the chances of a bad thing happening. So, yeah, are there other things? Because this is an ongoing discussion that is not going to stop here. But are there any other topics that you guys would want to, either related to this or something unrelated?
Braked approaches. If you could go over some of that would be
Yeah.
helpful
Well, I
for
mean,
me.
yeah, with braked approaches, obviously you got to set yourself up tighter, right? Otherwise, what's the point? It's entirely possible that, I would say if you just set yourself up for a normal approach, and once you get out of your last turn to final, you get on your rears and you get yourself steep, at least the sight picture then is about right. And now you're on a path to overshoot, and you slowly add brakes until this target stops moving up or down. You got to have a target. It doesn't have to be pea gravel, but you got to put something out there. And the point of the braked approach, of course, is to be able to explore this steep angle where you can come off and start to gain some speed. And there's a little bit of a drop before it flies itself into, like, right. So if I'm in brakes and I want to get forward speed, it's not instantaneous because of the pitch change at first, right? So there is a gentleness to the changes that are required. There's a gentleness to any heading change that's required as well, because an oscillation will make that target move all over the place, and you want it to be still. Whether it's migrating this way or this way, you want it to be still so you can notice that migration. You throw a roll into it, now your brain is like, so that's part of it. And to just, kind of become quiet and possibly get yourself, even when you're still over 100 feet, get, kind of real steep on it if there's any significant wind. And this doesn't work very well when there's no wind. There's no point in doing this exercise if there's no wind. Because, you take a Samurai 150 on a no wind day and you add those brakes, you're not going to shorten the distance that you travel. It's just with the headwind that stuff works. But you get yourself steep on it where you're not going to cover, you're on final approach, you're over your target almost, sinking at this sort of angle. Even the accuracy guys on the parafoils, I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of watching that sort of an approach on one of these gigantic, usually the 260, 280 with cells that are like taller than a 4-year-old kid. And you can really sink them down at a fairly slow rate. But they're so doggy. They're really, really slow. So when they make big changes, it's not the end of the world. On your canopy and deep brakes, if you make even a quick twitchy sort of a maneuver, now you're in an oscillation of some kind. You get off the brakes real quick, and now it really wants to dive, collect airspeed, and then shoot off. So you're dealing with a sort of a more, highly energized system. So you're going to be really disciplined. But believe me, that canopy will do it. If you're very gentle and you've got a little bit of a headwind, make sure nobody's behind you, have a really good plan for the, who's exiting when and all that stuff. You don't want to like spiral down and then do a braked approach because the people are behind you are going to be catching up to you. So that might be the one where you land last because you pulled higher. And you may want to, as all the accuracy guys do, turn into the wind, upwind of the target. Don't just notice your full flight glide, notice your sink glide ratio, right? When I slow the canopy down with this headwind, which will probably get to be, less wind velocity as I get lower, I'm just at least getting a sense of what it is today. And then I roll downwind into my pattern. And they don't really fly a very long base leg, which is interesting. Most of them. They tend to just sort of come at it, go to the brakes at the right time, maybe because the glide ratio isn't terrific anyway across the wind line. It's a big boring 7-cell with flares coming off the bottom of the canopy that's like this long. It's very draggy. So it's not a high glide canopy. It's less than 2-to-1. But if you've got your own skydiving wing, or whatever you want to call, a real parachute. That's very, very snobby. You have to, recognize that you're zipping all over the place until you go to those brakes. So you got to really park yourself in the right location, not carry a lot of speed through the last turn to final. And I normally, if I'm doing an accuracy approach, I slow down on the base leg. I usually slow down on the turn, is sort of like a braking turn from downwind to base. And I'm already getting rid of the speed. I nudge it a little too far into the wind, and then I come off the wind line. And now I navigate my crab angle to massage my approach to the correct approach vector. And I'm set. And of course, with braking turns, you got to learn the parachute. When you're in deep brakes, if you go like this, it may not even turn, right? So you might have to do a bit of offset. You might have to do leaning into it. But as you get deeper, any push of the wing that's going to be dropping, the side you're turning towards, risks a stall. And so that, it's a balance. Just like when you do like turning and then adding brakes and reducing brakes and adding brakes and reducing brakes. One of my favorite drills, and I make all my people do that one to really get good at that balance of power of the toggles while you're in the turn, right? What is too steep? What is too shallow? What's too much on the low hand? What's too much on the high hand? That'll pop you out of it and cause an oscillation. All that stuff is implemented in the very brief moment of this turn where I'm getting not just to a position in the sky, but an airspeed and, sort of stability as a result of a refined technique. Yeah. So that's kind of the idea. And then of course, you get off of it is my suggestion for most parachutes, get off of it by 100 feet or so that you're not diving, and make sure you let up your hands slow and you lift your knees up so it doesn't want to dive. And maybe collect numbers on that as well. When you're up high, you're up 2,000-3,000 feet and half brakes or a little bit more. Okay, I'm coming up in exactly 3,000 feet now. And then you let it up real slow and you get it all the way to full flight. And then you look again. How much did you lose? The Digi altimeters are good enough to do that. And then you compare and contrast doing it again, where you just get off of it and drop your legs, and cause that little bit of a downplane, and see how much improved the situation is with good technique.
I think we should talk about harness turning for Cs and Ds, specifically being able to be in half brakes and harness turn. People don't realize that you can just stay in that half brakes and harness turn your way through a series of turns if you're planning ahead.
Yes, absolutely. I think
that way your wing stays stable and you continue your turning maneuvers all the way through.
Yep, absolutely. And I have noticed, when you jump all different kinds of canopies, that they don't all respond the same to harness input. And some of them in deep brakes are very sensitive to harness input. Ellipticals are, because you're producing more lift and you tip it and it really loves to do that. And some of them, big rectangle shaped canopies, they don't like it. And leaning in the harness may not actually turn the parachute. So I think it would, but by C or D license, yeah, they're probably on at least a moderately elliptical canopy.
I know, I recently jumped, I had 2 jumps on the Student 240, the NAV 240.
Good
and
on
was
you.
able to harness turn those just fine. I mean, it's slow.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to help it, but they can be harness turned.
Absolutely, they can. Yeah, so if you get a chance to do it again, try it in brakes and see what the difference is. See if it'll still do it. I think that would be wise. But at the very least, finding that balance where you still have loads of lift and you got to, sort of play with, you know what I mean by the balance, right? So you start into a roll, ideally instituted by leaning your body weight into the turn, and then you're offsetting your toggles a little bit, and then you're pushing and releasing for pitch control during the turn, but you're also playing with the roll angle as you do that. That's a vital skill. And like you say, just harness turns alone to demonstrate, they can do it in the pattern. People can just look up and go, yep, I saw you do a nice harness turn, or I saw you on final do something with your body that didn't turn the parachute, fail. You didn't, and that happens a lot. I see people doing all these funky things with their bodies that the parachute doesn't speak that language. It doesn't do that. I had a swooper guy that I set up a hanging harness as I did, like pretty much every drop zone I've been to. This year I set up a harness and left it. I picked up some old risers and bungee cord. I left him my carabiners, the whole thing. And so he's just at the end of the weekend. It's Sunday night and I'm cleaning up my mess. And he just starts talking because, he didn't do the course. And we start talking about, he's like, oh yeah, man, I found out on my, my cross brace canopy that, if I do this, and he's describing what he's doing that worked better with harness turn. And I'm listening to it and I'm going, all right, that's going to be better than what you were doing. Sure. But it's not even close to optimized. I was like, dude, just get your rig, clip in, and if you make this system roll, right, the lines that go up through the beaner and through the other beaner, if you make the 3 rings offset, well, that's called an effective maneuver. Nothing else works. Nothing works but to tip the 3 rings. And so to feel, what does that do in your body? What does it feel like in trying different techniques of, does this actually do that? Well, actually, to a certain degree, it does. You push out on this riser, we go, oh, that's interesting. What if I reach if I wanted to turn this way, if I reach this leg out into the turn, you know what I'm talking about? Where they I want to turn this way and they point their toe towards where they want to go. And it does a little, right? Because your leg's heavy and, having your foot out there is going to do something to tip the weight off to one side of the parachute. But not nearly as much as when you reach across to the other side. If I'm turning left, my left leg goes all the way to the right. And now it twists my whole body into the turn. I go, ooh, that's what it's, that's the stuff. Always after a course, or after that section of the course where I hang people, they're like, oh man, now I can harness turn. And
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't describe these things. The person has to feel it. They have to actually do it. And so if we're going to add anything to the C and D license requirements, I say you got to hang up in a high performance trainer. Something that's actually going to teach you before you get up there in the sky and continue your bad habits. Your inadequate techniques that you had full faith in, and you have Dunning-Krugered the crap out of it. You know what I mean? And you've convinced yourself that that's what works. But it could have been, the canopy was turning despite the fact that you were leaning the wrong way, but you were pulling your toggle. Right? That stuff happens and people don't realize it. All right, we're running out of time. Yeah, hour and a half's a good amount of time, and I haven't really cooked dinner. I was making line sets and sliders and all that stuff. And I should probably make another video because I've got 5 videos to get out from that event. Yeah, check out have you guys seen the one that I just released today? It came out great. Yeah, the
Not yet.
new camera angle, way better. Because the one I did the week before in Canada, I put it on the chin mount, just face this way. It just looks right up my nose. Like, damn, I got to trim those nose hairs. And then if the chest one is pretty good because you can see my hands working. I like that. But you can't see my face, just the chin. So this one, I put it on an extended boom looking back at me on a VMAG that I can pull off if things get sketchy. If something wraps around my belly mount, I'm gonna have to break it off, like literally snap it, which I've planned on. Hopefully I'll never need it, but I thought it through anyway. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm going on break. Good stuff. I look
Yeah,
forward.
thanks,
to more,
Brian.
But yeah, there's great conversation. Yeah, we know. Thanks, Oleg, for asking the right question. You know, the hard question. So, if you had to rewrite the sim,
Yeah, think about it. Maybe by tomorrow.
By
I expect
tomorrow?
a full list by tomorrow. Maybe we should reschedule our one-on-one.
well, how about we just send him this video?
And I think we also
No.
have to remember that, not everybody is going to be an advanced canopy pilot. There's going to be the groups that do almost nothing but big waves. And, we just have to make sure they can get safely back to Earth.
Yes.
Well, and I also want to say that I'm not really making these things or suggestions or anything. I've been asked to make a list of ideas, and that's all I'm gonna present is a list of ideas.
Yeah.
And so
Well, you got a few tonight. I think we added.
yeah.
Some,
But if
some more
they
content.
did ask me for more, then it would be nice to have a list prepared that says, well, Brian Germain told me this,
Sure. Blame it on me. It's all right. I can take it. Not all of them like me because I'm a little bit of a renegade, but
Yeah.
I can live with that. I know I'm doing a good job. Not nearly as I'm gonna be doing, but doing the best I can right now.
Well, I think you're doing a great job.
Oh, just you wait. In 10 years, I'm gonna be very wise. Because
I still need to get you.
Because I'll be 48 years into the sport. How about that idea?
Yeah, I still need to get you out here to teach a in-person course
Bring it. Let's do it. Yeah, that's fine.
when I have time around my lightning purchases.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe September or something. Yeah.
Maybe that'd be cool.
Yeah, I haven't planned that far out just yet. But I'm full up until the end of August.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. It's great to see you guys. And Matthew, get me some video. Get somebody to film your landings.
I'm working on that. Yeah.
Keep on doing it. Even a phone will do the job. Awesome. Well, y'all have a great evening. It's great to see you. Thank you all for coming.
Good night.
All
Thanks,
right.
Brian.
All right.
Bye,
See ya.
guys.
Bye.